Hello and welcome back to our tier list discussion. Last time we broke down the B tier, and now we will be jumping into the C tier, or civs that just feel a little too generic, a little too frequently to be really that competitive, especially compared to the higher tier civilizations. These civilizations are not bad by any means, but they just don't have enough going for them that will feel really overwhelming, at least not very often. But without further ado, let's jump into the civ by civ breakdown. Okay, to start off our C tier, we have the Persians, a civilization that I actually really enjoy playing, but feel a little power creeped with the new expansions and feel a lot like a worse Indians, especially in the context of 1v1 Arabia. The Persians' sort of claim to fame, I guess, is that they have one of the most powerful booms in the game with their faster working TCs, which is a big help in many different situations if you want to get that economy edge over your opponent. They also have very powerful knights, reasonable archers up until the Imperial Age, access to gunpowder, and almost fully upgraded trash, missing only the bracer technology, which is a big deal, but it's only one tech. However, where the Persians really fall short is in that they just aren't OP enough. Especially when compared to the Indian economy bonus and the Indian tech tree, the Persians just fall a little bit behind in comparison. You'll almost never be making war elephants. You will very rarely be making paladins. So without those two units, the Persian late game is actually less impressive than it might otherwise appear. And in a lot of situations, you'll be relying on hand cannoneers and bombard cannons, which, while they have them, they just don't really, excel at them. Their unique technologies are also pretty useless in a 1v1 setting, and of course their docked bonuses isn't that useful either. So for that reason, they'll top off the C tier with a very powerful boom, but just not enough oomph afterwards. Okay, coming in at number 22, we have the Chinese, a civilization that I really enjoy playing, but again, just feel a little power creeped with the overall strength of the newer civilizations. Their most powerful bonus is their technologies costing less per age up, and their unusual start can give you an early villager lead if you get your opening correct, which really shouldn't be that hard considering the extra town center line of sight should give you your opening for sheep well within the sort of radius of your starting town center. In the late game, they have access to the Chukonu, which is a deadly unit in mass and can certainly win you games. Their cheaper technology bonus and their farm bonus just aren't enough to compete with the top tier civilizations these days. With that said, they are still a perfectly reasonable civilization and one that doesn't feel terrible. Again, they just feel a little generic a little too often, but you can still go for crossbowmen with thumb ring into the castle age, you can go for knights with bloodlines, and anything you do will be helped by the fact that your technologies are cheaper. In the late game, Chukonu and siege rams will be your unit comp of choice, but it's going to be a little hard to get to that, especially if, again, you're going up against a civilization that has an overwhelming bonus like any of the S tier civilizations, or even most of the A tier civilizations. Following the Chinese, we have the Teutons, which, again, are a civilization that is all right, but just aren't good enough to cut it in many situations. Their bonuses are all rather defensively minded, except for their tower garrison bonus, which can be used offensively with a very strong trush. However, beyond that, they really don't have much going for them in a 1v1 Arabia setting. Their crossbowmen are pretty mediocre in the Castle Age. Their only economy bonus is their farm cost reduction, which, don't get me wrong, is an amazing bonus. However, it doesn't really come into its full effect until the late Castle to early Imperial Age, where other civilizations' economy bonuses like the Celts or the Indians or the Huns really just start off the game very powerful, whereas the Teuton bonus doesn't come in until later in the game. Following that trend, the Teutons also have a very powerful late game with access to things like paladins and hand cannoneers and even the Teutonic knight potentially. Their siege is fantastic, same with their monks. But again, it doesn't come in until the late game. So in the Castle Age, you're stuck most of the time going for something like knights, which don't get husbandry. Yeah, their monks are good, but you don't really want to be going for crossbowmen, and need a castle for ironclad, so you're just kind of stuck playing defensively, and this civilization doesn't really lend itself to the sort of open map aggressive play that you commonly see on Arabia. Of course, their trush is very good, but beyond that, they're kind of going to be struggling a bit until the, post-imp scenario, and that's only if you have gold. Coming in at number 24, we have the Millay, which is probably a surprise to a fair amount of people, especially considering the fact that pros really like this civilization and pick it a lot. But if you look at the match results, especially in King of the Desert, the civ perform extraordinarily poorly. And honestly, I don't think this civ is that great for 1v1 Arabia. The civ is rather mediocre in my opinion because after the age up bonus, they really don't have much going for them. They have no real military bonus except the battle elephant cost reduction, and battle elephants are going to be pretty difficult to make in a 1v1, especially after their nerfs. And, the Millay battle elephants suck on an individual level. Of course, the age up bonus does mean that you can advance to the feudal age on 24 pop instead of 22, and it can also help in a fast castle situation. However, once you get there, you will have less resources than a generic civilization, and once you get to the next stage, you really don't have that much going for you, especially in the Imperial Age, where really your only option is just Karambit Flood, which has been nerfed in this most recent patch. And while some civilizations really struggle to deal with Karambits, others can just kind of laugh at them as the waves of cheap, crappy units just break on them. And even though they have essentially trash swordsmen with their no gold two-handed swordsmen, they really just don't have a power unit in the late game, and even in the mid game, they have no sort of real military or economy bonus once you get to the next age. If you compare this to a civilization like the Italians, who also have an easier time getting to the next age, the Italians have a much more fleshed out tech tree, and in addition to that, they have a solid unique unit, as well as access to cheaper gunpowder in Imperial Age. So, in my opinion, the Millay are just not as great a civilization as a lot of people give them credit for. Rounding out our C tier, we have the Goths, which are a civilization that will disappoint many people for being so low, because this is a fan-favorite civilization, because the Huskarls are really hard to deal with. However, the civilization is really crippled by its lack of economy bonus, as well as its lack of any sort of good defense whatsoever, having no stone walls. Also, this civilization doesn't really feel that great until you get your Huskarl machine up and running, and even then, some civilizations can deal with the Huskarls reasonably well, and even if Huskarls are hard to deal with for many civilizations, the time it takes to sort of get that running is way too slow for Arabia in many situations. You're not looking for Huskarl production until the mid-Castle Age, most likely, and a lot of Arabia games are over by then, and before then, they really don't have an economy bonus to speak of, and yeah, you have the decent men-at-arms rush. Also, in post-imp, the Huskarl and Halberdier Flood can be stopped by a civilization that has access to powerful siege or powerful anti-infantry options. And again, in the late game, they're really sort of pigeonholed into making infantry as their sort of main unit comp. Their trash is actually surprisingly decent, but they really sort of lack that sort of power spike in both the very early game and in the very late game. However, I do still put them in the C tier as opposed to the D tier, because in that sort of mid-game to like early to mid-imp stage, they are a very tough civilization to deal with for a wide variety of civilizations, even some of the S tier civilizations, looking at you Mayans. With that, we'll round out our C tier, which is definitely going to be the shortest tier and probably the shortest video in this series, but still, I hope you all enjoyed watching, and hopefully you will join me next time for the finale, the D tier, and of course I will link all of the other video parts to this series in the description below, so definitely look out next time for the D tier and the finale. See you then.